And welcome to Nats Chat for Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. Along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. The month of July 2021. That was the month when the Nats fell off a cliff. It was a nightmare of a month for the Nats in so many ways. It was the month that triggered the Nats rebuild. The month began with the Nats getting swept by the Los Angeles Dodgers in a 4-game series at Nationals Park, July 1st through the 4th. The Nats on July 1st, 2021 fell to 40-39 in the 2021 regular season. The Nats on July 2nd, 2021 fell to 40-40 in the 2021 regular season. The Nats, incredibly, had not had a winning record at any point in a regular season since then until now. Tuesday evening, game one of a 2-game series against the Orioles at Nationals Park. Game one of the 2024 Battle of the Beltways, the 2024 Masson Cup, if you will. The Nats won a 3-0 shutout of the O's to improve to 18-17 in this regular season. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast is brought to us by composer and pianist Tim Newmark. Tim composed the theme music for the Nats Chat podcast. You can visit his work at timnewmark.com. That's NEUMARK.com. Mark, as we know, the O's owned the Nats in the 2023 regular season, 4-0, and by a combined score of 11-1. But Tuesday evening, it was the Nats who owned the O's. And the Nats now are in a place that the team has not been in a very long time.
Remember where you are. So you remember where you were, Al, on the night of May 7th, 2024, when the Nationals finally got over the 500 hump. And, we started this podcast in 2021. There were some encouraging moments in the first half of that season, especially that June. But since July 1st, 2021, we've had a lot of negative shows to go through. And it's nice to be able to talk right now about something as encouraging as this, because it's not just that they did it. And look, 1 game over 500 really doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. You want to be a whole lot better than that, but you got to start somewhere, of course. But I think, to me, it's the way they did it, who they beat, how they beat them, the energy in the ballpark, and the energy and the words coming out of the clubhouse afterwards. This is not a team that sticks out its chest very much, has not had reason to do that very much. There was a little bit of that after this game. They are proud of what they've accomplished. They also believe this is just the first step. They don't think this is the end point. They think they are a lot better than 1 game over 500. Time will tell, but on this night, it was a good night to be a Washington National or a fan of the Washington Nationals.
Davey Martinez, during his post-game press conference, said that he didn't even know that the Nats had just done something special. Who knows if he was telling the truth or not, but I don't think it's that far-fetched that he was telling the truth. I mean, I don't know that if you're Davey, you get caught up in something like that. I don't know that you necessarily even want to know something like that. That's a very humbling fact that the Nats have not been above 500 in a regular season since July 2021. But a really good job by the Nats in this game. You think back to last season, the Nats got shut out by the O's multiple times. Here we had the Nats doing the shutting out of the O's in this game on Tuesday evening, and leading the way in the shutout, the ace of this national staff, Trevor Williams. The resurgence of Trevor Williams continues. Nats starting pitcher Trevor Williams, he on Tuesday evening had yet another good outing. 5 scoreless innings, 8 strikeouts versus no walks. He gave up just 2 hits, both of which were singles. He threw a ton of strikes, 77 pitches, 53 strikes versus just 24 balls. We had noted in some previous good outings for Williams this season, run prevention good, peripherals not so much. Williams in this game, run prevention good, peripherals outstanding. 8 strikeouts, no walks, a strikes to balls ratio of better than 2-1. And he does this against the team leading the majors in home runs for this regular season. Trevor Williams, the man who allowed the most homers of any National League pitcher last regular season, 34 homers. He has yet to allow a home run over his first 7 starts this regular season. He has tied the record for most starts by a Nats pitcher to begin a regular season without giving up a homer since the franchise came to D.C. Gio Gonzalez did not give up a home run over each of his first 7 starts of the 2012 regular season. We have been singing the praises of Trevor Williams. We are going to sing them some more. And to your point about against whom the Nats did what they did on Tuesday evening, to hold this homer-happy Orioles team to 0 homers, tremendous job by Williams.
Look, I'll be the first to admit this. It was a warm, muggy night. We know how the ball flies at Nats Park in the summer versus how it flies early in the year, late in the year. I thought to myself, it's going to end tonight. This is the end of the streak. He's going to give up. Something hit hard in the air and the ball's going to fly. And he didn't even come close to giving up anything like that. To me, the most remarkable thing about this is the swings and misses. 8 strikeouts for him, matching his career high. And he had that after only 4 1/3. So there was a chance for him to expand on that and set his personal record. He had them completely off balance all night long, throwing every pitch he had in the arsenal, keeping everything down in the zone. These are some really good hitters, as you know, who looked flummoxed facing Trevor Williams. There's only one base runner to get into scoring position. That was in the first, never advanced beyond that. The others who reached never made it past first base. This was as locked in as you can get in a 5-inning start. And they didn't do this against the A's. He didn't do this against the Marlins. He did this against the Orioles. All the credit in the world to Trevor Williams. He, of the 4-0 record and yes, 1.96 ERA. Let me say that again. 1.96 is Trevor Williams' ERA, almost at the quarter point of the 2024 season.
It may sound funny. It's not funny. It's not a joke. If you are listing all-star game candidates for the Nationals this season, I think you start with C.J. Abrams. I think there is a very compelling case for Kyle Finnegan. I think Hunter Harvey may have something to say about all of this. And how do you not include Trevor Williams at this point? How does he not at least come up in that conversation if you're talking about all-star candidates? Yes, I said all-star candidates for the Nats this season. You know what's interesting? The Nats could have multiple players in the All-Star game. We have a ways to go until then, but there are multiple compelling, legitimate All-Star game candidates for the Nats. When's the last time we could even talk like that about this team?
You know, we've got our friend out there, Chris, who tracks the Al Galdi trade rumors, trade propositions over the course of the podcast. I think it's time to start a new one. The Al Galdi All-Star suggestions for the Nationals. You just rattled off several names, including Trevor Williams. So let's start the ticker on that one. Trevor Williams to Arlington, Texas, this July. You're not wrong. I mean, if he were to keep doing this, of course you have to consider that. I think we all keep thinking that the carriage is going to turn back into a pumpkin at some point, but it hasn't happened yet. And let's talk about the way he's being used, because I think that's a big part of this. I know there are fans out there that are asking themselves, why isn't Davey pushing him any further, especially on a night when he was as locked in as this? I guess I didn't see the broadcast. I guess Kevin Franson brought it up some and made it sound like Trevor himself looked kind of upset in the dugout after being pulled. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get that. I think in this particular game, it's not to me about the innings. It's not even about the pitch count, although Davey keeps mentioning the idea of 80 pitches is sort of the limit there. To me, it was about who was coming up in the 6th. It's the top of the order for the 3rd time. 2 of them lefties, 1 of them a switch hitter. You have Robert Garcia available to you for the first time in a couple of weeks. You're only lefty in the bullpen, and it's a 1-0 game. And this lineup, 1 bad pitch, 1 swing, that changes the whole game. So I completely understand and agree with Davey's usage of him here. There may be a day when it makes a little more sense to let him go, when you have a little bigger lead, when the spot in the lineup's a little different. I thought in this case, Davey handled this one perfectly.
So first of all, regarding the All-Star game conversation and trade chip conversation, one thing leads to another. Trevor Williams is heightening his trade value right now in pitching like an All-Star. So one thing can help the other. But yeah, honestly, I don't really have much of an appetite for conversation about criticism of Davey and the way he's managing Trevor Williams. Davey is managing Trevor Williams perfectly. Okay, there is nothing wrong with what Davey is doing. And the idea of push him further, no, Trevor Williams is not some 24-year-old who you're grooming for the future, okay? He's a veteran on an expiring contract who had an ERA above 5 last year. You're trying to get what you can out of the guy. And then, who the heck knows beyond this season if he's even here anymore. Davey is handling this perfectly, and you cannot argue with the results Williams doing as well as he's doing. And if he's upset about it, good. I'm glad that he wants to pitch more. He shouldn't pitch more. He should pitch 5 innings and then get yanked out of these games. It's working out exceptionally well. And to the point about Davies managing. Look what happened after he pulled Trevor Williams from the game. This shutout on Tuesday evening was not just about Trevor Williams. 4 Nats relievers combined for 4 scoreless innings with 4 strikeouts. The returning Robert Garcia, a perfect top of the 6th with swinging strikeouts of the Orioles' numbers 1 and 2 batters, and shortstop Gunnar Henderson and catcher Adley Rutschman. Derek Law tossed a perfect top of the 7th. Hunter Harvey, a scoreless top of the 8th. And Kyle Finnegan, a perfect top of the 9th for the save. And he did this in facing the Orioles' numbers 2 through 4 batters in Rutschman, designated hitter Ryan O'Hearn, and first baseman Ryan Mountcastle. So a few notes on the bullpen. So like I said, Robert Garcia is back. The Nats on Tuesday afternoon announced having reinstated Garcia from the 15-day injured list. He had been on that since April 23rd, retroactive to the 21st due to influenza, which has become a very familiar word with the Nats this season. Corresponding roster move, by the way, to the Nats reinstating Garcia was them designating reliever Matt Barnes for assignment. So Tanner Rainey does survive, at least for now. And then Hunter Harvey and Kyle Finnegan continued to roll. Your updated numbers for these guys this regular season. Of course, Harvey, the former Oriole, 19 and a third innings, ERA at 2.33, whip of 1.03. And Finnegan, 15 and a third innings, ERA of 1.76, whip of 0.85, 12 for 13 on saves. More dominance, especially from Harvey and Finnegan in this game.
Outstanding. I want to give Robert Garcia credit. And, he had about 3 or 4 rough outings in a row. Maybe it turns out when you're trying to pitch through the flu, it's not such a good idea and the results don't match up. What he did in this game, he looked really good in striking out a couple of good hitters at the top of the lineup in Henderson and Rutschman, and then getting a weak comebacker from O'Hearn. Derek Law's been doing a better job for them lately. Hunter Harvey, I felt like there was maybe a little extra emotion for him facing the Orioles. He was a little bit off, at least from the way that he normally is, falling behind, a little bit of loud contact, but obviously got the job done. And Finnegan, we've been talking about this for a little while now. There isn't a fear factor when he comes in. I mean that in the best possible way. You don't have a fear of him blowing it. This is not him getting into trouble and having to pitch his way out of it. He has been almost perfect now since that game in Cincinnati that he blew. And you mentioned All-Star. I absolutely think we've got a ways to go. But right now, he's pitching as well as any reliever, any closer in baseball. And there's such a comfort level to it. And we've mentioned this before in the 3.5 years we've done the podcast. How many closers in Nationals history have you truly felt confident about when they took the mound in the 9th? Kyle Finnegan right now is pitching as well as any of them ever did and giving you every reason to believe that there's not even going to be a hint of him blowing a save.
This is not the installment of the podcast on which we should harp on the struggles of Tanner Rainey, but I do want to get your take on, were you at all surprised that the corresponding roster move to the reinstatement of Robert Garcia was not a move involving Rainey?
Not surprised, a little disappointed, I'll admit, because you put them side by side. I'm not saying Matt Barnes has been great, but he had at least a few games here and there that you thought, okay, this guy could do something for us. He has a track record in the big leagues, and Tanner Rainey just has not had that. So you can't make the argument that this is strictly about performance and the pitcher least deserving of staying with the team is the one they let go. No. Now, I get it. You've invested a lot more in Tanner Rainey over the years. You want to believe you can get him back to being, somebody who can help you out and pitch in meaningful situations. But right now they're hiding him. He's the last guy on the list. He's the one pitching mop-up situations. I thought they would maybe find a way to put him back on the IL, say that his arm is still bothering him, which, I don't know what he's feeling, but it would not be a big stretch to try to say something like that and go give him some time to rest up and then go pitch at AAA on a rehab assignment and see if you can get him right again. In Barnes's case, in theory, he could clear waivers and could report to AAA, but he's a veteran. He has the right to refuse the assignment. And I would imagine that's what he'll do and try to catch on with somebody else. Maybe Matt Barnes wasn't ever going to get it together and become an important part of this bullpen. But that felt to me like cutting ties with somebody who just had less of a history with the organization, as opposed to the pitcher who clearly was the least deserving of staying on the big league roster right now.
Well, and what really stands out is the extent to which Davey is going to not pitch Rainey. So it's almost like you're going with a man short in the bullpen. I mean, it's almost like Rainey's become a Rule 5 draftee. He's Nasim Rainey right now, and that he barely pitches. He pitches like once every 5-6 days, it feels like. And that is hard to have be the case for the long haul. So we'll see how long that lasts for. Hopefully Rainey gets on track, but obviously that has not happened yet.
Especially hard to do when your starters are only going 5 or maybe 6 innings, and you're using, as we talk about, 3, 4, even 5 relievers on a given night.
Well, the Nats offense in this 3-0 win over the Orioles on Tuesday evening. Not great, but certainly good enough. The Nats scored 3 runs. So the Nats totaled just 6 hits, which were 2 doubles and 4 singles. But the Nats worked 6 walks. The Nats continue to be so much better at drawing walks this season as compared to last season. Nats went 3 for 13 with runners in scoring position. The Nats scored a run in the bottom of the second, scored 2 runs in the bottom of the seventh. All 6 of the Nats hits came from the numbers 5, 6, 8, and 9 batters in the lineup. Jesse Winker, he has the Nats starting left fielder and number 5 batter, 2 for 4 with a double and a single, and he had a stolen base. Winker in the Nats 1-run second, a leadoff single through the right side of the infield, and he had to steal a second base. Winker in the bottom of the 8th, the first pitch opposite field double to left field. Joey Meneses, he is the Nats starting first baseman and number 6 batter, 2 for 4 with a double and an RBI single. Meneses in the Nats 1-run second had an opposite field RBI single to right field for a 1-0 Nats lead, despite having been down to the count at 1.12. Meneses in that Nats 2-run seventh, leadoff double to left field. Eddie Rosario. We have the Trevor Williams resurgence. Now we have the Eddie Rosario resurgence. So he is the Nats starting right fielder and number 8 batter, 1 for 3, RBI single and a walk. He had a stolen base. Rosario in the Nats 2-run seventh, the went out first pitch, opposite field RBI single to left field for a 2-0 Nats lead, and he had a steal of second base. And Trey Lipscomb, he is the Nats starting third baseman and number 9 batter, 1 for 4 with an RBI single with a stolen base. Lipscomb in the Nats 2-run seventh, opposite field RBI single to right field for a 3-0 Nats lead, and he had a steal of second base. You may have noticed me mentioning stolen bases quite a bit. The Nats in this game ran all over the Orioles. That was a big part of this Nats offense.
It was the plan going in. They felt like Corbin Burnes was a pitcher they could run on. I know Adley Rutschman has a good reputation throwing out runners, but as we've said over and over again through the years, stolen bases are usually off the pitcher more than the catcher. And they determined that if they got on, they were going to run against Burnes, and they absolutely did it the way that this team needs to do it. If you wanted to say to somebody who has not watched the Nationals at all in 2024, hey, here's a videotape of a game that tells you who the 2024 Nationals are in a nutshell, this is pretty much it, the way they went about it. And the only thing offensively that maybe wasn't all that reflective of them is that C.J. Abrams didn't do much, and Luis Garcia, he drew a couple walks. He had a great play in the field, but he wasn't hitting the way that we've seen him hit here otherwise lately. But you get on and you get yourself in a scoring position however you need to do it. My favorite moment of the game from an offensive standpoint, Jesse Winker, who, I mean, he is really something. Singles, he's still second. This is not a guy known for his speed. It's not a part of his game, but he's running for them and doing it well. He's still second. And then he takes off from second with Joey Meneses at the plate, and it's a hit and run with a man on second, and it works perfectly because Meneses just pokes a single to right field like he does when he's going well, scores him. I don't know if he would have been able to score on just a standard single without running on the pitch. I don't know in 20 years how many times I could remember the Nationals doing a hit and run with a man on second. They've done it twice now, like in the last week. That's who they are right now. They're doing whatever it takes, and I'm here for it. Know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and just try to maximize it the best you can. I thought they did a great job of it in this game.
The Nats are leaning into their strengths, which is what a team should do. And that's good managing right there. It is funny with Abrams, 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. I mean, one of his worst games of the season offensively, and yet the Nats end up winning this game. I mentioned the 6 walks. You mentioned Luis Garcia Jr. drawing a couple of walks. He drew 2 2-out walks. He had to steal a second base. Jacob Young, he is the Nats starting center fielder and number 1 batter, 0 for 2 with 2 walks. And speaking of Nats center fielders, Victor Robles is back. The Nats on Tuesday afternoon announced having reinstated Victor Robles from the 10-day injured list, which he had been on since all the way back on April 4th due to a left hamstring strain. He suffered that in a 5-3 win over the Pittsburgh Pirates at Nationals Park on April 3rd. But Jacob Young, for at least Tuesday evening, did remain the Nats starting center fielder. The corresponding roster move to the Nats reinstating Robles was them optioning outfielder Alex Cole to AAA Rochester. What do you think the plan is with Robles? Do you think that starting center fielder job is Jacob Young's? Do you think we'll see an even split between Young and Robles, or do you think we'll see a good bit of Robles?
I am absolutely fascinated to see how this plays out. And I think the most common answer to it may be Jacob Young in center and Victor Robles in right field, or at least some of the time. Davey mentioned that. Robles himself mentioned that he's been taking balls in right field and trying to get comfortable with it. I think you have to acknowledge that what Jacob Young has done since coming up here is worthy of more playing time. He has a dynamic that he brings to them. Um, it's similar in some ways to what Robles does as far as running the bases and playing great defense. But at the moment, Jacob Young is kind of hot, and you don't want to mess around with that. Now, Eddie Rosario is not hitting or hadn't been until the last few days. All of a sudden, he is. So you don't want to give up on that, hoping that history holds true and he starts getting hot now that it's May. So I could see a scenario where it's kind of Rosario and Robles alternating in right field. Maybe there's a game here and there that Robles starts in center because Young gets the night off. But I think Victor Robles is going to have to work to get his playing time again. I don't think it's going to be an everyday job. And I'm a little disappointed because I think, as we've discussed, when he's been healthy the last 2 years, he's been really good. So much so that you kind of want to see more of it and find out, have they finally tapped into something here? The problem is he couldn't stay healthy. And now that he's back, there are others who have played their way into those jobs. And we know there's more coming as well down the road. So he may end up kind of the odd man out of this. So I'm really interested to see how this does play out.
I was thinking about this with Robles. So he and Patrick Corbin are the only 2019 Nats still with the team, right?
Rainey's the other one.
And Rainey. Okay, so those three. So Robles has the chance to be a position player who lasts from the last incarnation of good Nats teams into the next incarnation of good Nats team. Now, of course, there's a lot to be determined with that, but he's still young enough to where it's not like inconceivable that that could happen. But obviously, he's going to have to earn his spot, and going to be hard to do that if he's not playing. So we'll see. Jacob Young's been doing a good job. Robles is back, and to Mark's point, it will be very interesting to see how this ends up going down in terms of playing time. The Nats on Tuesday evening bullied the O's. I don't think you can overstate that. The O's came into the game with the best record in the American League this regular season. The Nats shut down this team. The O's for the game, no runs, just 3 hits, no walks, 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position, struck out 12 times. I thought we had a very telling moment, top of the ninth. Ryan O'Hearn and Brandon Hyde both getting ejected after O'Hearn got called out on strikes in facing Kyle Finnegan. You know, it's a funny deal. I don't know that this comes up that often, but Brandon Hyde and Davey Martinez were on the same coaching staff. We're on the Chicago Cubs coaching staff. When the Nats lost that hideous Game 7 to the Cubs in the 2017 NLDS, Hyde and Martinez were on Joe Maddon's Cubs coaching staff for that game. I mean, it's so funny how things play out. And to have this poetry of the Nats get to a winning record in a regular season, first time since July 2021, via a win over the O's. You know, it's hard to script this any better. If you're a Nats fan who despises the O's, Tuesday night was a great night for you.
Well, I said this is really one of the most encouraging, optimistic, uplifting days that the Nationals have had in a long time. They could have gotten over the 500 hump against, Texas. They could have done it against Toronto. In a way, it was more fitting to do it this way, to do it to the Orioles, to their ace, to do it with a lot of Oriole fans in the stands. Let's make that clear. It was at least 50-50, it felt like to me, of a crowd of 29,000. But you know what? It brought energy to the ballpark. The players, I think, felt it, and it made for a really good environment. If you are a Washington National or a Washington Nationals fan, go ahead and puff your chest out a little bit on this day. You may not get to do it for long. I think we both would tend to agree that when it's all said and done, the Orioles are going to have a better season than the Nationals. But the Nationals are trying to get there and trying to get back to where they were the last time that they had a contending team. And I think players in that clubhouse believe they're not as far away as a lot of others expected. Although, let the record show, we were both fairly optimistic coming into this season. You even more than I was.
Yeah, and I thought that this season could be for the Nats what the 2022 season was for the O's, the bust-out season, the breakout season. And I think, it's the obvious point to make. There's a long way to go, but if you're going to have a breakout season, a bust out season, getting above 500 for the first time since July 2021 is something that you need to do. And the Nats have done that. So game 2 of this 2-game series for the Nats against the O's at Nationals Park, Wednesday evening, 6:45. Mitchell Parker will be the Nats starting pitcher. Kyle Bradish will be the Orioles starting pitcher. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast has been brought to us by our good friend Tim Newmark. Let me get the read. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast has been brought to us by composer and pianist Tim Newmark. Tim composed the theme music for the Nats Chat podcast. You can visit his work at timnewmark.com. That's NEUMARK.com. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Nats Chat. Our YouTube handle is at Nats Chat Podcast. And please click on the thumbs up button and please click on subscribe. We very much appreciate that. We have a website that you can check out, natschatpodcast.com, in which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.